Welcome to the WAGScast, a unique platform for empowering women and inspiring change, brought to you by Care Talks Women Achieving Greatness in Social Care Awards.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this WAGScast. What a great title, a WAGScast. And we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome. Now, you don't need to go and get a dictionary to find out what that might be, because that's what I had to do. But we're going to enlighten you all with my colleagues here to talk about this. And actually, if you think that you don't know what it is, as soon as we start talking, you will start to recognize some of the challenges that you overcome and can be seen in that same light as the term imposter syndrome. But first and foremost, let me introduce you to my colleagues on the call. I'm going to come to Claire first, and Claire, you can say a few words about who you are.
Will do. Hi everybody, my name is Claire Leake. I'm the Chief People Officer here at National Care Group. We are a specialist provider of care and support to adults who have learning disability, autism, acquired brain injury and mental health diagnosis, and we're a national provider, and it's great to be here today.
Thank you. Great to have you here. And Angela, did you want to say?
Morning or afternoon. I'm Angela Boxall. I'm the CEO of Majesticare. We're a care home group that provide care predominantly for people over the age of 65, for nursing care, residential and dementia care. I'm a very proud ambassador of championing social care, and I'm also the chair of Care England. That's me.
You're very welcome. It's lovely to have you ladies with us today. And just for the record, I'm Nadra Ahmed, and I'm the Exec Chair of National Care Association. So we're going to just touch on a few things before we start. I mean, I'd be really good just a couple of seconds to hear from you both. And Angela, you go first. Just a little bit about how you got into the sector.
I got into the sector sort of within a gap year, really. So I left university. My sisters were working in a care home, and I went to work in the sector 6 hours a week as an activity coordinator in a nursing home. And the rest is history, really. I just realised that social care is not what everybody told me it was, or I thought it was, but something completely different. A real opportunity to make a difference, to change people's lives. Yeah, carried on studying, had lots of opportunities, and from meeting other people. You know, they always say you have to be in the right place at the right time. And now I'm the CEO of Majesticare. Having worked there, they bought me as a home manager in 2006. So I'm sort of probably the longest serving employee now. Yeah, it's been a long journey, but a very interesting and fruitful one.
And hopefully we'll find out a little bit more about that as we go along. So thank you. And Claire.
So not as esteemed and long a career in social care for me. So most of my career within the HR space has been in telecommunications. So that's a very dry subject. But obviously, from our perspective, you know, sort of modern day living, everything that we do is run over the internet nowadays. So it was interesting to be part of that sort of boom time, sort of in the late 90s and early 2000s. I found social care by having a slight career break, and then was looking for a local role, and found myself applying for an HR manager role at an epilepsy care provider local to where I lived. And that was my first introduction to social care. So that really opened my, my eyes into this sort of relatively, particularly then, you know, sort of unseen community of colleagues and workers who just go about, you know, sort of enabling people to live their lives in the community, as we all do, and take probably for granted every day. So that's sort of my introduction into social care. And now, to be honest, will I ever go back to telecommunications? Absolutely not. And talking about bandwidth and pipes and things like that, not much fun. But you know, just seeing the difference we make to empowering people, you know, sort of getting their, you know, sort of reaching their potential is just absolutely amazing. And you never get bored in this sector at all. You know, there's always something happening and opportunities to innovate every day. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you. And it's, in fact, you know, as you've just described, it is quite infectious, isn't it? So, but the journey, the trajectory that you two ladies can give us a bit of experience about will be really helpful. And I'll just start the conversation off by saying that when you've been in the sector for the period of time you have, or you've been in it and been really engrossed in it, as women, we very quickly realise that it's something that we want to do forever. It just appears to be that way, doesn't it? But what you end up sometimes thinking is, I came from a different, Claire, as you just described, Claire, you know, so do I know everything? Do I know all that I need to know? You get to the stage where Angela is now, and, you know, not only the CEO of the organisation, but now also chairing a national body that represents the larger care providers. So, I mean, these are quite significant roles, aren't they? So just touching on that, and I mean, I was just saying to you just before, I find it quite interesting. I mean, I don't know how I got to where I got to, because my background was in education. So you just kind of come through it, and it's 43 years on. And here I am doing something that is completely, you know, gets under my skin on a day-to-day basis, as you just said, Claire. You know, no 2 days are the same. You kind of move on. And the challenges have been significant. And I think it'll be interesting to hear from you, just, you know, what during your journey coming to where you are, an example maybe of where you felt that you were actually under that, as you're navigating through things, what experiences made you wonder about this? Am I for real? That imposter syndrome bit?
Yeah.
Angela, did you want to go first?
I used to think that every morning. I used to get up for work every morning and think, God, they're going to realise I don't know what I'm doing today. I think there's been numerous examples that I can think of where I've just thought, actually, I can't do that. And to be honest, it was probably when I was a bit younger. I think as I've got older, I've got stronger, and my network is stronger. And I realised that they say the same thing to themselves every day as well. I thought it was just me, but actually it isn't. I remember the first time I went to a very well-known healthcare design awards. I think it was probably 2014. And I was one of a very few amount of women in the room. I felt that I was one of the only few women in the room. I didn't feel overly comfortable. Left sort of before the drinks at the end of the session and things like that. So because I didn't feel that I should have been there, and now it's completely different. Now you go to award ceremonies, there's loads of women there, very successful, but I still feel sometimes the caring a job was an exact example, Nadra, that what, me? Me? You know, how on earth can I do that? And I think as women, it's interesting because I think we all feel a little bit like that. I don't think it ever goes away. It's probably not as often now as it used to be. But yeah, still happens.
And as you say, it's every day there's a new challenge or something you face, something to, and sometimes it's also things that you've faced before and you think, you know, I got through it that time. Am I going to do it again? Am I going to be able to make it again? So it's all those, it's a self-doubt. And there are some men who have the same, it's a personality thing, isn't it? That you kind of either think you're going to achieve it and get on with it and do it, or actually, how did I do this? How did I get there? Claire, have you got any thoughts, any examples of how you felt that?
Yeah, absolutely, Nadra. I think, particularly when you're perhaps, sort of changing sector as well, and you're coming into a very established sector that has, sort of lots of networks of people who have worked with each other in different organizations before. And all of a sudden you find yourself, sort of, well, you're firstly picking up a new language of acronyms that you've never really, sort of, you're asking the question, what does this mean? What does that mean? And, so there's firstly that, sort of, you've got a learning curve to deal with, as well as trying to assert your own specialist knowledge or, your subject matter expertise. But I think that the other thing for me is, and Angela mentioned it, I think when you're earlier in your career, it's very easy to doubt yourself, to also look at other peers and colleagues and compare yourself, and or they did that, should I do that, and almost hold yourself accountable to other people's standards. And I think as you get older and sort of a bit more experience and worldly wise, you become a bit more comfortable in your own skin in terms of, and having that confidence to think, you know what, I do know what I'm talking about. However, you still potentially find yourself in those sort of situations where that voice is in the back of your head when you're doing something for the first time. So whether that's sitting on a panel at a care show or doing a WAGScast like we are today, you're thinking, oh, what have I got to say? Do I have something really to contribute to this? And I think just having this conversation will probably hopefully help a lot of women who are at whatever stage in their career, just think, they're not on their own. We all have it. It's not you hit a certain point in time and that's it. You're never going to have that doubt again. But we're all going to do that because ultimately, I think we all care, and we care about what people think about us, and we care about sort of how well we're sort of performing. And I think we sometimes don't reflect enough on all the hard work that we've put in to get ourselves to where we are today. So yeah, it's just having the conversation makes me feel better because I know that I'm not on my own, and we're not on our own,
I mean, it's quite an important point, isn't it? About as on the, as you on the trajectory to success, what does success look like? What do we think success is? But as women, I think you sometimes don't actually recognize it yourself in any way, shape or form, because you're still running a home sometimes, and you've still got kids, and you've still got to do the day job and do the evening job, and it kind of becomes a bit of a challenge, doesn't it? So I think that's where the self-doubt, and for anybody who's watching this, I suspect that's tenfold in many ways. We're constantly doing this. I mean, do you think that men also have that? I mean, I said that as a kind of a flippant comment just a little while ago. There are men who will be in that. Or do you think men are just generally more confident about the way that they approach? I mean, I'm talking about our sector, but I suppose we can widen that up to a more general comment. But do you think men have the similar self-doubt, or do you think they've got a different trajectory?
Yeah,
I think they do. If you want me to answer that one, yeah, I think they probably do. But I think the difference is potentially that there's always been a wider network of men within the sector. And I know that when I've felt, am I good enough? Can I do this? My network of women in this sector are the people that I go and talk to. They're my crutch, if you like. We help each other. And certainly when I first started, I needed those women around me that said, come on, let's do this. Or women that were already very successful, inviting me to things to expand my network, because actually that's critical, I think, when you're working within our roles within the sector. I think men tend to pat each other on the back a bit more. Years ago, potentially, that probably won't go down very well, but I think that culture, certainly what I saw, that there was a real, come on guys, they had fun together, they pat each other on the back, great job. Whereas I don't think years ago there was that network of women to potentially do that. That's changing now. So hopefully these leaders of the future that are coming through now, some of these incredible women, potentially will have imposter syndrome a bit less. Because they've got role models that they can look up to of great women that have done very well in the sector. But also, I think women are very good at saying well done. People think that women sometimes fight against each other. I actually find that's completely different. Some of my biggest supporters and within my career have been other successful women that have helped me along the way.
I think that's a really interesting point, because quite recently somebody said to me that women are your worst enemy sometimes as you go up the scales, because and I think Margaret Thatcher's often quoted on this, isn't she, as what she did for women was nothing. Because she was just not one of these women who was going to appoint women into roles. She was very much in that kind of trajectory. I don't know. I mean, how do you feel about that, Claire? I mean, do you think there's any truth in that, or is it that women are better at being supportive of each other? I mean, it was a man who said it to me quite recently, that actually some women can be quite awful to other women.
And I would say some men can be quite tough on other men. So I think, you know, sort of there's a bit of balance there. I think, you know, sort of to Angela's point, I think we're getting better at networking and building our peer relationships, whereas in the past that's always been quite tricky to do. I think men naturally find that aspect a little easier to do. You know, walking into a room full of men holding a, you know, glass of wine is a bit easier, you know, when there are fewer women in representation. I think men absolutely do still have, you know, imposter syndrome to various levels, but I think they maybe have a different way to deal with it, and it doesn't necessarily hold them back as much as it would some women. So, you know, research shows that women have a very different way of looking at a job description when they go for a job or for a promotion, and make sure that they can tick every single aspect of that job description off before putting themselves up for that role, as opposed to men who typically look at it and say, well, if I can do 70% of the job, then that's great, I'm just going to go for it, you know. So I think there is a difference with our mindsets in terms of perhaps being a little more critical on ourselves and just holding ourselves to that I feel like I need to do everything, as opposed to, you know what, I can do 80% of this and I'm going to back myself the rest of the way because I know I can pick this up. And that's where I think, you know, our position is to support those rising stars to have more of that approach about things, and to back themselves and put themselves out there for those next opportunities, whether it's internal promotions or external opportunities. Because I do think that is quite a shift in the way that we typically, you know, or in the past traditionally have looked at job opportunities, maybe a bit more risk averse.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting about the risk averse bit as well, isn't it? Because we do sometimes you don't jump in at the deep end as quickly as some people might do, because you're not quite sure of your territory at that moment in time. I mean, I just wonder, Angela, you were talking about, you know, there were fewer women about. I'm just wondering whether, you know, how has that changed, and how is it that women are promoting other women much more? Is that what it is?
I think so. I think so, and I think maybe those women have been role models for other women to continue that amazing work. I remember there's 3 women that I met very early on in my career that opened so many doors to me by introducing me to other people. They championed me as a younger person, you know, coming up, rather than and one lady always said to me, you know, us women, we have to help each other through. And I think that women feel more comfortable walking in a room. And actually I had a gentleman say to me once, when I walk into a room and you're there, I always think, oh, I'll be okay. So they do feel the same. I think women perhaps feel it. We're quite feely feely people on generally, I'm saying generally, obviously. But I think we feel the effects of imposter syndrome potentially more. So I think they have imposter syndrome. But there's 5 different bits, isn't there, to sort of, different the way that you feel. And feelings for women, I think, is what holds us back, because I think we think about it, we overthink sometimes. And as you say, we're also juggling. So very often when I sort of go to events, even now, I'm thinking, gosh, I should be at home with my kid. And so I also think that women aren't just thinking about the here and now and what they're doing. They're also thinking about everything else that's going on in the world that they should be doing. So yeah, and then we just go home and be mom, or daughter or mother or whatever. And I think there's less of that feeliness with gentlemen, potentially, again, generalizing, but for me, I would be scared to walk in the room. I'd be like, oh gosh, right, okay, come on, you can do this. Whereas men would walk in and think, right, who can I go and talk to? So I think they jump in first, then look, whereas we'd be before we went in, I think. I don't know, but certainly that's how I used to feel.
I think you kind of hit a point here where I hadn't envisaged it, but you're right. When you walk into a room where you don't know anybody, you actually potentially don't know anybody. You're going in the dark, and we spend time potentially giving evidence in the Commons or whatever it is, and there's a room full of people, and you wouldn't know people there. There is that hesitation, isn't it? But I think what we forget sometimes is we've been called for a reason. You've been called because you are recognized as knowing that subject. But we still doubt ourselves. There's still that bit of doubt. And whenever I've given evidence, that's when I've walked in and think, why on earth have they asked me to come and talk about this? And you see some of our male colleagues with reams of paper, and they're they've really prepared themselves, whereas we might be slightly different in the way that we prepare ourselves. I just wonder why it is that certainly in our sector you're beginning to see more and more that women are beginning to be called up, and really good points that Angela made early on, that now when you look around the room there are some highly successful women, and how do we see them being mentored? How have we helped to get them to where they are as people along the... Sorry, Claire.
I think that's a really good point. I think, well, starting point, something like WAGS is a great opportunity that is very focused on, sort of supporting and championing women within social care and identifying those rising stars. I think that's the next thing. It's, as employers, what are we doing to enable women within our organisations to see those career paths, to have that opportunity to grow and to develop, that we are championing them so that they can see a route to becoming a COO. So if I look in, our organisation, we have a female COO, we've got, female representation on the board, and, women who have, sort of worked hard in their careers. They've juggled, we've managed families and work, but we've still made it. Now, we're still always going to have a little area, element of doubt there. But, if I look at our management layers, they're predominantly women, and we have a perfect sector to promote that and to continue to grow that. And the more that we can network and peer support each other, whether that's, looking at each other's, sort of posts on LinkedIn and liking or commenting, it just, reaffirms that we're all in this together. We're all, heading in the right direction, and that we're each other's biggest supporters. And I think that will be such a refreshing thing from a, not just for our sector, but just across our communities, because I think, in the past, women haven't always been the best supporters of each other, or, if you've been ambitious, you might have been, sort of referred to as being perhaps a little bit bolshy or combative, and sort of a bit aggressive. How many times have I heard a woman being referred to as she's very aggressive? Well, no, she's just the same as the chap next to her, but he's ambitious and she's aggressive. So it's just changing some of that narrative, I think. And if we can get ourselves, and we're supporting our colleagues and all of those future rising stars, then for me, every year we go to award ceremonies or any functions, networking events, that representation at the senior levels is just going to be changing every year. It's going to be becoming a 50-50 split, maybe a 60-40, where we've got actually more women there than men. That would be great. And across all the different roles. So yeah, I feel like there's lots of opportunity for us to really smash some of these stereotypes, and support and sort of be the allies for the future talent coming up through the ranks, to be honest.
I think that comment that you've just made about the narrative is really important again, isn't it? Because it's the same wording, but actually the implications are very different. One is aggressive, one is ambitious, which I think is something that I've kind of noticed all my life in a different way, that so and so is really ambitious. But with the male, well, that is what it is. It's clear ambition. It's really good. But actually, so and so was really aggressive in the way that they approached something. Angela, did you have a comment on that particular point?
Yeah, well, I think as well, one thing I did want to mention is that I think is really important, is that actually I've had some really good man champions of Me Too. I've had some gentlemen within the sector that are there even now that I can ring up and go, can I have 5? I literally did it this morning to one of somebody that I know within the sector who's got lots more experience than me. So I just wanted to make that clear, that there are men out there as well that I think deserve a mention, because actually they've also helped to get women where they are today. I think a huge championer of women. Excuse me, I've got a bit of cold. So yeah, I think Claire's absolutely right. I think I have been called a bit outspoken. Am I outspoken, or am I just confident enough to put my point of view across? Probably a bit of both, if I'm completely honest. But in some circumstances, you can be seen as being too confident as a woman if you're comfortable to sit in a room full of important people and have an opinion. And that's actually not, that's not always the case. I've heard of a few women in the sector being called aggressive, and actually they know what they want. They're ambitious, and why shouldn't they? It's but yeah, Claire's absolutely right with language is everything, I think.
Yeah, and I think that it's interesting, that word ambition just seems to conjure up all sorts of different things in the gender, because everybody should be ambitious. Actually, when you're mentoring somebody or you're trying to support somebody, you want them to be ambitious. You want them to go the next step, and you want to be supporting them in that way so that they will achieve what they want, and you'll be behind them. You'll be there to catch them, because we don't all get to the next rung in a smooth trajectory, do we? And there, by the grace of God, go all of us. So I think it is really important that we work on that. I mean, for me, I think when we think about this and how we do support women to achieve their full potential, we're doing the same for men, actually, when especially in the roles that you're in. And I know that if you've got somebody that you're working with who you think has the potential to go to the top or do whatever it is that they could do, you do make that, you do it for both of them. I mean, do you think there's anything specific in women, certainly in social care, that makes it a unique challenge, the imposter syndrome? What is the main challenge that we find in our sector for women? What holds them back? What are the barriers, do you think?
I'm happy to have a stab at that to start with. I don't think there's one particular thing. I think there are multiple things. I'm not even sure it's just sector specific, but you know, there can be caring responsibilities that need to have an appropriate work-life balance. Perhaps a concern over, you know, sort of whether you need to have formal qualifications or just that doubt. And maybe it's just understanding that people are around you, that you've built some allies around you to play on your strengths and focus on how your strengths can take you forward, and not expect too much of yourself in that you have to be an expert of everything. You know, sort of that's something through, I think, time and age. What comes with that is, and a bit of maturity, is knowing that surround yourself with people who can also address some of your areas of weaknesses as such. You know, we're not all masters of everything. So, you know, look at other people's strengths and think how they can be complementary to maybe your strengths. And then as a team, you can take things forward. So it's not just that insular view of you yourself. It's, you know, everybody around you and the part that we each play to support each other in that journey, I suppose.
I think the other key thing is potentially learning to say no. Certainly earlier on in my career, I would get an invite to something, I'd say yes, because I'd feel like I had to be there. I'd feel like if I didn't go, then I wouldn't get that, they wouldn't ask me again, I wouldn't get that opportunity again. And, you know, when you're doing a full-time job as well, and a mother, I think burnout for women, trying to please everybody, trying to keep that balance as it should be, is really, really hard work. And I think it's not until you actually find peace with who you are, what you can do, and actually acknowledge that you don't have to know everything, and you don't have to please everybody, because actually you never will. It's only then, I think, that actually, certainly personally, I've been able to say, actually, no, I can't make that. No, I can't do that. And also choosing who and what to support and who to be around. I think that's key. You said something earlier, Nadra, about women who potentially aren't champions of each other, and they're still there. They're still there. I think we just have to be careful. They say you become like the people that are around you. So I think there's probably more supportive women in the sector now than non-supportive women, and that's why it's becoming a little bit easier for people to make that next step.
So I think you're right. There are more women who are more supportive, and you're absolutely right, Angela, that there are also men that are supportive of the trajectory of women. There's no doubt about it, and vice versa. And that's the bit about the sector that we need to be very proud of in many ways, because of the developmental thing. I mean, I still think that in some of the larger corporate sort of settings where I go, and that's, you know, across university, you know, governors and all of that kind of stuff, you still find fewer women when it gets to that higher echelon, don't you? Because there's certain, I wouldn't say it's a glass ceiling, because people do break it. I always remember a particular board I sat that I still sit on currently, but when I joined it in my very first, I'm in my final year of it, I found it interesting that I was the only woman there, and all the other board members were men. And you know, it's now changed to almost 50-50, but it's taken a bit of time to get people, you know, through to do that. But even now, when you actually see the boards being replenished, you'll see there's a view that the men would be better because they know better IT or whatever it might be, you know. So I mean, what if you were asked to give a couple of tips about you know, to other people watching this, women, you know, how do we boost each other's confidence? What, you know, I'll start with you, Angela. You know, what would be a really good tip? You've given some really good things about, you know, walking into rooms and just, you know, holding up and going and talking, but Just a couple of tips that you think would be really helpful for somebody who's watching this.
I think having a mentor or somebody at least that you look up to and who you trust, I think that's the key thing. Talking things over is really, really important. The other thing is to realize that everybody else is probably in the same position. I think that's a huge realization. But I think the key thing for me is to put myself out there to various organisations, various, I've joined Champion Social Care as one example. That I met so many people through doing that really gave me the confidence to start and build my own career more, and my confidence just grew and grew and grew. So I think having a look at things that are out there, there's like the Outstanding Society, there's so many different things that women can join. Institute for Social Care, Health and Management, all of them, My Home Life, they've all got something going on that women can join, be active in, be involved in. And I just think the people that you meet through that, the people that give up their time to make the sector a better place to live and work, are normally the people that will help you along the way. They're giving up their time to make a difference, and for me, it was absolutely priceless. The people that I met and the opportunities that gave me, and the confidence that it gave me.
Huge amount about confidence, isn't there? Claire, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely everything that Angela's just said. The importance of having allies around you, whether that's peers that you work with, colleagues you work with, past ex-colleagues, etc. Just people who are going to be championing yourself and who you can use as a sounding board, I think is really important. And just understanding and appreciating the power of your network, I think, and your network is what you're going to build by putting yourself out there. So what I would say is that, to beat that niggly voice in your head, you have to put yourself in a bit of an uncomfortable position sometimes, and just breathe and get through it. And you'll always learn something. You'll always come away probably self-critical and think all the things that you wish you'd done differently or whatever. But the ultimate result is you've gone through that thing that you were nervous about, and you've come out the other side, and actually next time around you'll be like, right, I'm going to do it differently this time, and you'll feel more confident, and that just grows and it develops, and that almost becomes a little bit infectious. You're looking for the next thing that's going to push you out of your comfort zone. So it's just building that confidence, and sort of not letting any imposter syndrome paralyze you from taking those risks, I suppose, or those opportunities that present themselves. Because that opportunity to put yourself in this position could lead to a different relationship being, sort of built with someone, and that could lead to a different job opportunity or an opportunity for a promotion. All of these things, So just embrace it is I suppose what I would suggest to anybody watching this.
I think just to add there, if you don't mind, Nadra, is also to have clear goals, to have a clear vision, to sort of be really confident in yourself where you want to go. And then there are people out there that can help you get there. But I think it's really important that we set goals for ourselves, small goals, large goals. And I always tried to dream as big as I could. And I always try to say that to my son as well. Nothing is not achieved. You can achieve anything if you put your mind to it. And I think we have to have that mindset a little bit more as women within this sector and obviously wider ones.
But thank you very much for your time today, and thank you to WAGScast for uncovering this really important and interesting subject. I think it is interesting, and I had to kind of look it up to start with, but it is so poignant, it's so pertinent, and for women it might be more important, but let's not forget it's there for everybody. So thank you all. Thanks very much.